Hello, Krakow. I'm very happy to be here today. And especially a big thanks again to Dominica and the team for having put, I would say, that incredible setup here in a very beautiful, relaxed environment. So I will do my best so everyone hears about it. And I want to first start with how did we come about, me coming here in Krakow today? A few years ago, I was doing this with one of my partner, an ecosystem show, which was a podcast, and we were exploring different startup ecosystem around the world. And Krakow was one of them. So we were learning about Krakow. We were trying to understand what is Krakow doing to really boost the startup economy here in Poland. And a few years later, we stayed in touch, and here I am today. And before I dive into the topic, I would like to ask you a question. So who from you in the audience is building a startup or is part of a startup? Raise your hand. 1, 2. All right, a few. Who in the audience is part of a VC community or investment? All right, also a handful. Who from the audience is part of an educational institution like students or PhD? We have a big group here. All right. And the rest, I guess, Dominica, from an institution helping entrepreneurs to be successful. Raise your hand. Here we go. So what you will see in every startup ecosystem that you need different entities to build it, right? We have Krakow, like the organizing this today. This is kind of a hub. It's kind of an orchestrator. And we really need them, especially in newer hubs, to put people together, build a thriving ecosystem. But my talk today, and I hope that I can give you some ideas, some tools, some motivations about why do you need, or how a city or an entrepreneur or a business needs to build an innovation ecosystem, a business network, and how you can do that. So let's dive in. When I started, really my educational journey, I was not in business at all. I was a chemist. I studied chemistry for 6.5 years. My mind was not into business, was not into scaling a business. And in fact, that was 2012. Back then, there was no startup in Europe. No one was talking about startups. Maybe in Paris, maybe in London, but that's it. And innovation was really working for R&D department in a big company. So there was no career path as an entrepreneur, especially in Europe. But then, I studied and I started to do that in 4 different countries. I was in Germany, Switzerland, and also Mexico later on. Switzerland was having a bit of a startup hub in Zurich. And they were talking about spin-outs. And then I started to, I like that concept. Spin-outs, you can maybe build your company and so on. But still, it was very small. But then I started to meet more people in that space. And I found a patent of a person which was doing the topic I was doing, artificial muscle. And that guy was working in Silicon Valley. And I said, I want to work for that guy. I don't know how, but I want to work for that guy. So I tried to reach him online, didn't work. I tried to write him an email, didn't work. And then I asked for an introduction of someone who knew him. And that worked. So that led me to an internship. I really worked 1 year in Silicon Valley, 2019, 2020. I came there as a chemist in a business environment working for a startup accelerator and later on an incubator of startups. It was for the firm Bayer. I don't know if you know it. It's a pharma company. And really, with no knowledge. I didn't know what was a VC. That was 2015, you can imagine. And what I quickly learned in 1 year in Silicon Valley completely changed my perspective on life. And the big highlight you can imagine was building business networks. Because Silicon Valley, I don't need to remind you, but they're not just way ahead of any other places in the world for startups. They are like 12 times Paris in terms of startup output, financial, capital raising and startup valuation and so on. So they're doing something different and a lot of people write about it, but I experience it. And one of the major thing was mindset, right? They think different. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, said, Silicon Valley is not a location, it's a mindset, right? And with that, when I came back from the US during COVID, I decided to write a book during the COVID time. which is here. It's called Building Networks. Today's Superpower, Building Networks, 7 mindset principles to thrive in a fast-changing world. So the book is really about mindset. I'm not telling, business things or how I made it successful. I took example about, a lot of successful entrepreneurs. I look at the literature. I did 20 interviews, and I found out that, the world's changing, businesses are actually leveraging powerful business networks. So networks that you see here is not networking. I'm talking about ecosystem, partners, partnerships. How can you scale a business through a network effect? These kind of things. And there's really 3 factors that is happening right now in our economy that I want to share with you today. Number 1, our economy is shifting from a shareholder economy to a stakeholder economy. What does that mean? Post-war, it was all about reporting to investor and shareholders. So CEOs, you never saw them on TV or on social media. I mean, in fact, there was no social media. They didn't really care. They didn't need to. Today, businesses need to report their carbon footprint. They need to explain why they took a certain supplier. They need to tell the impact on the communities they have based on the decision they make. And that all is like the stakeholder economy. You have to make everybody win, not just your shareholder. And that's not my term. It's a term that was coined by, the World Economic Forum. And because of this, you have an acceleration of collaborations between businesses so they can fill the gap and make certain stakeholders happier. So that's number 1. Number 2, the internet, in the boom of the 2000s, made an explosion of startups. Silicon Valley, if you think about it, started in the 60s with, companies. The VC didn't exist in the 50s. It was invented in Silicon Valley. So they invested, built companies, and success that it is today, Microsoft, Apple, and so on. And that's why it's called Silicon Valley, because it was all about computer chips, hardware, and so on. But with internet, entrepreneurship got democratized around the world. And now we're really witnessing for the last 15 years, and it's not older than that, a startup revolution, which is now coming to Europe. Right? I mean, before the year 2000, you really didn't have any startup with no VC money. And now you have like major hubs that were established in Europe, from, London being by far the number 1. But then you have France, Germany, that just in 1 quarter this year raised over $2 billion for startups. 2015, I think they were less than, maybe 200,000 or 300,000. So this is really happening right now. Is new. Is not something that we should take for granted. And countries like Poland as well, right? Everybody wants to create a startup hub because every country understood this is the future of our economy. And here's a third reason why. There's an acceleration of speed of technology. We call them exponential technologies. They go so fast. Blockchain, AI, Gen AI, you all know about it, right? Space tech. We have biotech. We have, all these like gene editing technologies, curing cancers we never imagined before. And now you combine like these different disciplines in one, and you have a new product, right? Autonomous, delivery, for instance, was a combination of computer, IoT with, mobility and so on. And so these 3 combination, the shift to the stakeholder economy, the rise of the startup economy, and the speed of technologies make that the future of any businesses is about collaboration, right? And McKinsey reported that today, you have 2% of businesses that are doing a business ecosystem business model, right? Leveraging partners to deliver value to customer. And by 2030, that will be 30% of all businesses worldwide. So it's a massive shift. And now what is the problem? Well, no one is used to that new thing about alliances and partnership. And you ask a CEO today, what is your ecosystem strategy? And they're completely lost. They don't know what it is, and they don't even know where to start. 70% are struggling with this. And so there is a shift. And that's why I want to share that the number 1 thing that people like us in this new economy have to do is to shift our mindset, right? If you look at history, how we innovated in the past, it was siloed because it was better, right? We talked about manufacturing. We talked about healthcare. We talked about, material science, but it was not connected. So people were not collaborating. They were just in their siloed. And on top of that, you worked for one company. You were not like collaborating with it was IP, right? Don't share, stay in your line. And that was great, right? You had the best discoveries in the world, like company 3M, you had a company like IBM. All of that was private inside the company, and they made new products. You have to understand that this is now finished, right? Now it's all about sharing and collaborating. So the first mindset shift that I want to share with you is you have to go away from protecting to giving, right? So anytime that there is an opportunity to provide value, to provide a service, to kind of give up access to a platform, and we see that right now with AI, right? We're talking about open data, like leveraging open platforms. This is what it is about. So having that mindset of scarcity and protective to a mindset of abundance and giving. The more you do that, the more you put that in the air, you're gonna have that more of the value that come back to you. Coming back to the sharing aspect, it's the same. So if you are more visible online nowadays, right, like using social media and so on, that would benefit you. Is it not something that is nice to have? CEOs get hired now with on their to-do list of big companies I'm talking about. They have to do social media now. They have to basically react to every news we have out there and make sure everybody is not freaking out. And this is why you see these big CEOs, Satya Nadella, Sam Altman, all these guys, they're all always in the news. So there's a shift in skills. Before it was all about finances, and now it's about social skills. And that is also reported in HBR and so on. The last one that I want to share to build networks in terms of mindset, which I analyze from, again, research interviews, is you have to think bolder. You have to think bigger. One of clear aspect that I learned from the Bay Area was that they always think like doing the impossible. If you ask an investor in the US or in Silicon Valley that you have a new technology to go to the moon and you want to, collect rocks, whatever, they're going to ask you, how are you going to do it? Usually in Europe, when we say, I have a new technology, I want to go to the moon, they just want to skip. They don't want to hear the answer and how you want to do it. I'm actually putting that in simple ways, but this is happening. And I think that comes back to our, where we come from. We are in isolated countries. We think about our market first. And if you look how many entrepreneurs in Europe are starting a business and are starting in their market, instead of looking at what is the biggest market for me, maybe outside of where I come from, right? This is the mindset. So think bigger, think bolder, because that actually builds networks. People are going to be attracted to you. And as an entrepreneur, there's 3 types of networks you have to surround yourself by. First one is the network of ideas. What I mean by that is actually when you talk to people, it's not always to have a transaction. It's just to bouncing your ideas, asking your customers about what they think about it, asking very experienced individuals what they think about your business model. Or maybe you need to kill your idea in the first place. You need to have this constant exchange to really have this flow of information coming back to you so you can make gut decision about, what is next for your company. And this is why, people in Silicon Valley are always networking. It never stops. Here, for instance, we have maybe, a few events per day in Krakow. I remember we had 50 to 70 events per day in a city that is just 800,000 inhabitants, actually a bit the size of Krakow. So it was constant. And that's like the exchange of ideas, right? They get this intellectual knowledge from their network. Number 2 is the network of resources. What I mean by that is you're going to need money, and everybody needs this, but you need more. If you're a hardware startup, you need a place to manufacture. You need a supplier. Maybe if it's a lab, maybe it's life sciences, so you need labs to produce, to test. And OMGKRK is actually providing some infrastructure like incubators and accelerators and so on. So that's the second one, network of resources. And the last one is the network of people. And that is really the people that are going to do something for you, that are going to share what you do, that are going to work for you, that are going to hire other people, that are going to make introductions, so operations for your business. And that is the same. You need to create that network, because alone, and you will face it, it would be very difficult to build any businesses. So that's kind of basically what I analyze about, successful businesses from everything that I've done so far. But a few years later now, I evolve in a role. Today, I work for a cybersecurity startup, and we are right now raising $10 million. And it's extremely hard in today's current environment. I don't know if some of you are fundraising, but we all know that it went really down last year. And so if your network is not prepared to build that company, you can really almost say, you can stop right away because it will be extremely hard. 90% of startups are failing, and very few are making it even to the second and third round, which is called Series A and Series B. So build your network early, build your network proactively, and so you are prepared when you're an entrepreneur. And by the way, statistically, people that are 44 years old are the ones that are actually successful as an entrepreneur. It's rarely the ones that are in their 20s. So with the experience that I gathered, I became now a partnership professional because I got passionate about this topic. How do you build partnerships between organizations? And now I'm going to talk beyond mindset. I think mindset and communication is the first step, but now I'm going to introduce you to 3 other pillars to build networks effectively. The second pillar that I think everybody should be aware of today is AI and tools to build networks. I give you an example. How many of you are using proactively a CRM to manage your network? Raise your hand. So that's, if everyone raise your hand properly, we're talking about less than 10% of the room. I have the opinion that everybody should use a CRM, even if you're not selling a business or selling something. And I tell you why. If you always just make introduction and you always have only people on, in your phone book, you never know what is the relationship with them or how strong it is. So if you build a CRM, you can tag the people into different buckets, different organizations, different purpose, different interest, and then you can send information proactively about their needs time to time. You warm it up. You take, you do this kind of it's called lead nurturing, or you can say network nurturing. So you can activate. If they visit your website, they get a point. If they came to your event, they get a point. If they are making introduction for you, they get a point. And then you can create a score of your network based on how much they're actually working with you. And imagine you do that for 10 years, 15 years, and you have 5,000, 10,000 contacts. One day you have a business ideas and you need help. You know exactly who to reach out for what and why. And that's the power of these kind of tools that you can use, which you can really automate with AI and really generate to make sure that they're always keeping warm. So if you don't do that today, I highly encourage you to do this. I personally became a huge fan of a tool called HubSpot to do this. And it's really life-changing in my opinion. But you also have other tools like Notion or others. The third pillar that I want to share with you is basically certification and education. As I told you, 2% today of businesses are doing ecosystem business model platforms. That means very few people, even executives, understand what that means. If you want to prepare for that new economy to make more money, but also be successful and change the world, you're going to basically need to understand what it is about. So I highly encourage you to look into some programs that offer it. Sometimes it's executive programs that are super expensive, but you can also join communities that are talking about this topic. There are 2 communities I want to highlight, which I'm a big fan of. One of them is called Partnership Leaders. And the second one is called, for instance, ASAP. It's called Association for Strategic Alliance Professional. And they always have guest people coming and teaching people how to do partnership and alliances. Last but not least, I want to share the 4th pillar, which is basically networking events. When I say networks, 95% of the time people think that I'm talking about networking. Networking is just a little part of business networks, and it's also extremely important. Things like today, they are great, right? Because we can have this, what we call serendipity. You don't expect it to happen, but you just bounce into someone and that person is actually helpful to you. Maybe not now, but it may be later. And if you don't go out, you don't network, obviously you don't going to, come across these opportunities. So I encourage you not only to come here today in Krakow event and hang out, but go to several ones and go even to the ones that are not directly related to your job. If you are a designer, maybe you should try a tech event. If you are a tech person, maybe you should go in healthcare. If you're in healthcare, maybe you should understand what UX designer are thinking about it, because it's the combination of diversity that is going to build tomorrow's products. Now, to finish things up, what it's all about. At the end of the day, I think you all notice we are living in a kind of weird moment, right? You have politics clashing again, like the most since the World War II and the Cold War. But you also have this climate change problem. And you also have, inside a country, some unrest about certain politics. People want to go back to before. They want to go away from Europe. And the only way to solve this large systemic issue, it is going to be through collaboration. And this is really where I personally started. And I said, how are we going to solve this world's biggest problem? How are we going to stop fire, from burning forests, or fish, to disappear? Well, it's going to be through collaboration. It's through partnership. So think today, I hope after this talk today, you're going to think about what is a problem that I really want to solve in this world? Something that is close to your heart, something you really care about. And instead of saying, oh, I have an idea, I'm going to build it, you said, from who can I take that idea that has a kind of a solution to solve the problem? And I'm going to partner with that person. So that's that mindset. You go away from building yourself and you try to see which organization should I bring together to solve the problem. Think about the problem, not so much the idea, because the idea is going to change so many times every year with exponential technologies. With that, I want to say a big thanks again to Krakow, and I hope that you're gonna, network now with everyone here. And while you network, please ask yourself, how can I add that value to that person that I'm meeting today? Listen to whatever they're doing, and maybe you can make an introduction for them. Maybe you can share a piece of data, research, or maybe you can just give feedback to their business idea. Don't just listen and go around, but really add value, and never forget to connect, because you never know, maybe in 5 years from now, that's going to be your business partner. Thank you very much.